Hey there guys, if you don't know who I am Bizzleberry. I am a currently Master Support player on EU, and I'm here to bring you how I like to play Senna. This is my main primary Senna. I think this is regarded as the most meta build at the moment, a Glacial Senna. So if you're willing to learn about Senna Support or any other champions, then you know my channel is great for that. It's amazing, believe me. If you are watching this on YouTube, then please subscribe. Lots of guide content coming. I've recently done a Janna gameplay video of how to play Janna safely. I've got loads of tier lists and all that kind of gameplay stuff as well onto YouTube as well. Now, how we're going to do this guide is I'm going to go through runes, builds, like item builds, what you should be doing in the game, just briefly talking about summoners, all that good stuff. Nice and juicy topics, skill orders. But with a twist. We're currently streaming on Twitch at the moment, and I will be opening up different sections to questions and answers, just in case, you know, there's a question that you may be thinking about that I'm not thinking of. Someone in the chat might have that question. So let's get this underway. So first we're talking about the runes. This is, you know, as you can see on the screen, this is what I have been using in my master games and my high elo diamond games. I've been using this 99% of the time, with the Glacial Augment being meta, magical footwear, biscuit deliveries, and approach velocity. I should say this is currently 10.11. Approach velocity is getting buffed in 10.12, so that she's going to be slightly stronger because of that. The free boots are super nice. There's nothing really else available there in those trees. That you could do Futures Market instead of biscuits, but I wouldn't recommend it because you need that extra sustain in the laning phase. Presence of Mind is very critical in terms of her making sure that she has mana during the laning phase. You can get assists with your ultimate, which is kind of, well, it is global. So you can get assists from across the map and then get the mana with the Presence of Mind. Now, one of the runes that I wouldn't mind if you changed is this Legend of Clarity rune. I feel like you could go into Coup de Grace. That is an option as well, but honestly, if you look at the damage numbers over a game, it doesn't really do that well. Cut Down would actually be the best rune out of all of them if there are multiple high HP tanks on an enemy team. That's because Senna's base HP is particularly low. Cut Down does more damage to tanks with the more HP they have. So this rune is potentially decent. If there's like 2-3 tanks on an enemy team, you could go down to this route. Otherwise, I like going the attack speed. Now, Senna has a weird attack speed thing where every attack has a wind up, and it doesn't get affected too much by attack speed, but it still does. And also the Q cast also gets, the animation is slightly faster with attack speed as well. So that's why I edged more towards that in order to get more of her abilities off, to get more souls from her passive. And we'll talk about souls very briefly in like a couple of minutes. So this is what I like to do. There's currently another build going on, which I'll briefly mention now because who knows, it could become meta in a few months' time. I've tried it and I don't like it. It's a Grasp of the Undying build. I do not recommend it, but it could potentially be an okay tool to learn how Senna works because it does make you tankier. But really, I don't want you to steer away into that kind of category. I would like you to stick with the Glacial Augment if you are going to be practicing it, because I do think it is the strongest and you should learn from and get used to the build that's going to carry you in your games. Okay, I think we covered the runes, and you know, the disparity sometimes with the clarity options. And what we'll do now is we'll go into the practice tool and we'll talk about skill orders and items. So let's head over into the practice tool. Training, practice tool. A practice tool is a really good tool anyway if you're not very familiar with it.
No one fights alone.
You can practice your skill shots, you can practice flashing over walls, you can practice ward placements as well, which I can show you a cheeky ward placement while we're doing this as well. But we'll get that filler content in. Why heal? Okay, we can talk about summoners. So on Senna, you'll always want flash. Game, thank you. You'll always want flash, without a doubt, on anything that you're playing down the bot side most of the time, unless you're playing Yuumi. So flash is pretty critical. Now the thing with Senna is it's all about surviving the laning phase and getting as much of her passive stacks off as possible. So in order to do that, you need to survive the laning phase. You have a few options on defensive summoners. You've got heal. If your AD carry is not running heal, your lane partner, I highly advise you to take it. Not just because of the actual heal itself, but the movement speed it gives. It allows you to kite back a lot easier as well, especially with the Glacial Augment, since that will apply slows not just to your auto attack, but also to your Q. Your Q will also apply all on hits. So the heal allows you to kite a little bit better. If your AD carry is running heal, your other two options are barrier or exhaust. Now, if the enemy team is running a lot of assassins, then you would probably lean towards the exhaust. Otherwise, barrier. You just want to stay alive in the laning phase as long as possible and just get souls up. We'll talk about souls now, I guess, because I've been mentioning it constantly. If you're not aware of Senna, that is a wall of text. It's one of the biggest wall of text in the entire game. I'll do a very good, brief summary, to make it simple for you guys to understand. Senna does not want to last hit minions. Souls drop off minions, and you can acquire themselves from hitting an enemy champion twice in a short period of time. There is a cooldown on that. That cooldown gets reduced as you get a higher level. So Senna does not want to hit minions. If she last hits minions, then she gets fewer souls, and fewer souls means that her passive is not as strong, and that's where the core of Senna comes into. So every 20 stacks that she gets on her souls, she gets increased range, she gets critical strike, and any excess critical strike is then converted into lifesteal. The most important thing there is the range. The range can get really bonkers, and as you can imagine, if you are having to require to hit an enemy champion twice to generate one soul, the more range you have, the easier it is to do that. So the very first 20 that you get is really, really important, because then it escalates into a quicker 40, into a quicker 60. So every interval that you're looking at your soul stack is every 20. Everything else in between 20 is pointless. So every multiplication of 20 is super important in terms of where you want to be on your passive. Sometimes in terms of what you're aiming for in the laning phase, 20 souls by 7 minutes is ideal. Sometimes you can get it by 6, and that's super good. Sometimes by 8 isn't great, but as long as you're not too far away from that, you should be doing okay. So we made it clear you don't want to actually last hit minions. So how else can we generate soul stacks? So epic monsters also drop 2 every time you kill an objective. The Baron, the Herald, the Dragons, they also spawn 2 souls, and that's it. So it's letting minions die by you not last hitting it would generate you. A cannon minion does it every single time. The other minions, you occasionally get 1 or 2 if it's not a cannon minion wave. And then the rest of the laning phase is just you trying to harass. If you land any one of your abilities or auto attacks onto the enemy twice, you will generate a soul. Okay, so when you're playing Senna, you'll always want a cutlass. Nope. Where is it? Spectral sickle. Sorry. Looks like a cutlass, but it's not a cutlass. Don't want to bait you into something. So you start with cutlass and 2 potions. And then the build that you go into is a pure lethality build. So the very first utility item that you want to buy is a Serrated Dirk. If you're against an executioner, a healer, then you would want an executionist for that. So picking up an early executioners is one of the best reasons, and one of the main reasons you may be picking Senna in solo queue. So if you're against a Soraka or a Yuumi or a Nami, any of those healing enchanters, Senna makes it so it frees up an AD carry, your AD carry slot, to buy an executioners. But if you're doing really well in the lane, buy the Serrated Dirk first. because usually the heals aren't too empowering very early in the laning phase, and if you're doing really well, go to straight to Dirk, and then buy the executions if needed. If you don't need any grievous wounds on the bot side of the map, then you go straight into Umbral Glaive. That's your first core item. I'll briefly talk about that. Once we talked about the other items, I'll go into Umbral Glaive and the mechanics of that very shortly. So if you haven't had to go Executioners, and you have two options here now, when you've got Umbral Glaive, you may have the Executioners. Let's just buy the Executioners just in case you're against like a Yumi or a Soraka or something. Now you're looking for another lethality item. So I like Edge of Night because Senna's really squishy, and 1 CC crowd control effect on you can be your death. So Edge of Night is a really good item, but it doesn't have any cooldown reduction on. The other option is Yumumi's Ghostblade. It has that 10% extra cooldown reduction, which is extremely useful. And it has an active that gives you movement speed. So now if you're really fresh to the game and you're not very used to actives, maybe just skip over this item completely. But if you're okay at using actives, then this can be a nice item to kite, but you will, if you still get hit by 1 skill shot, crowd control effect, it could mean your death, whereas the Edge of Night could save your life. So I generally, in most of my games, pick up Edge of Night next. So then that leaves us with this Executioners, and then you want to convert that into Mortal Reminder. Now, I would go through the lethality maths with you and how it works, interacts with armor penetration, but the maths is already done, so you just have to believe me that currently, as of Season 10, it is extremely efficient to buy 2 lethality items and then finish off our last Whisper item in terms of armor penetration. You just have to trust me and believe me. This, paired with also Boots of Swiftness, when you can finally pick that up, you'll get the free boots in through the runes, and then you'll want to pick up the Boots of Swiftness 99% of the time because it's such a good, it's cheap as well. It would only cost you 600 gold, and with the free boots you'll get plus 10 movement speed, and it's just a great kiting tool. Like everything about Senna is kiting. You're bobbing and weaving, getting in and out with the Glacial, and yeah, that's like the main effect of Senna. You're going in and out, just getting all that soul generation, and when you get to about 100, the attack range that you'll have, you'll be able to do really well. So that's for the items. Now the Umbral Glaive is a very special and unique item, and it's one of the most annoying items to have to deal with if you haven't dealt with it already, if you are the enemy. I can't show you an example in this game, but what it does is every 45 seconds currently, as of this patch, there'll be a little purple eye above your head when you're near a ward, and you'll be able to detect wards as if you had an Oracle's. So an Oracle's is the Oracle's Lens, the Trinket. If you're familiar with this red item, if it will basically do this equivalent all the time until that little purple eye pops up above your head, and then it warns you there's a ward there. You'll be able to detect stealth traps and wards during that duration, and throughout the entire game you will do triple damage to wards and traps. So you one-shot normal wards, you'll have to hit a control ward twice. But what you can do against a control ward is that your Q is an auto attack reset, and we'll go through abilities in a second, so you can actually kill the control wards pretty instantly anyway. If you have Umbral, do you still go Oracles or something else? Yes, I like going Oracles anyway. So once you have access to Oracles, it's a nice little extra combination, because you know you're going to be able to sweep through the river and clear out as many wards as you can, or traps or teammate mushrooms and things like that. So there is very nice synergy still between having an Oracles and the Umbral Glaive. Now I think we've got through all the items. That is the absolute core. If you're still finding yourself, a spare slot should be having control wards in, and if you're really looking for something else, then you could do like a rapid fire cannon or an infinity edge. Like eventually you could sell the spectral sickle, but we're talking like 50 minutes into the game, so you could pick up like an infinity edge at that point. Alright, let's go have a look, talk about the Senna's items. We'll have to level up a little bit here. Ah, the power practice tool. So what we can do here is we can spawn some dummies.
Don't make this personal. I'm not nice.
So one of the first things you will need to learn what to do, these minions are going to be frustrating. Can we delete them? Oh, they've changed all the practice tool. Toggle minions. There we go, we killed them. They're out of the way.
The only way out of this.
So your Q is a laser. You can use this to attack anything. It can be your own turret, it can be an enemy player, it can be your own ally. So there's two functions to, maybe three functions. Is a damaging effect. It will apply one debuff of your soul. So you would need to do another hit after that to then grab a soul. It can be with your W as well, like that as well. Any combination of two damaging effects will get you a soul. Also, it heals yourself, always. It will always heal yourself, and if you land the skill shot, if you see on the width, the thin line in the middle is the damaging, and the outer ring, the outer line is the heal. So if you hit that on an ally, it will heal them. So there's a two component, and it can happen at the same time. So you could use your ally, you could target your ally, and then it would still damage the enemy. So here we're healing our ally, and then the enemy's getting hit. W does get souls, Marino. Look, I will show you. Boom. Any two damaging things. It can be with your ultimate, or it can be with an auto attack, or your Q, W, or R. Not your E, because your E doesn't do damage. Okay, so that's your Q, and that's your Q function. That's your bread and butter. Every time you land an auto attack, or pick up a soul, which you'll see later on, if you're not familiar with what the soul looks like. Little, in this skin, they're purple orbs. In the base skin, they look like little black ghouls. You'll be picking those up every time you do that, or hit a turret, or pick up a soul, or hit a minion, or hit an enemy champion. Your Q will be reduced in cooldown by 1 second. So when your Q is on cooldown and you're looking to harass still, it will be wise to auto attack some minions, get that up off the cooldown, and then that helps that process, especially if you've got the extra mana for it. So that's the Q covered. The W is very familiar to Morgana's binding if you've ever seen Morgana or played her. One short range. This is not affected by your passive. It's got quite a long range. When it hits, it does damage, and then it will root anyone else around it in that circle, but it won't do damage to them. The snare circle, the snare effect does not do damage, and that means you won't generate souls from the actual snare effect either. Now, one little professional tip I could give you here is that if a minion is very low HP, so say if a minion was 1 HP and then you W'd that minion, it would die, then instantly snare everything around it. So if you actually get a killing blow with your W, the snare, it will instantly snare anything around it, which can be pretty useful in some spicy situations and catching the enemy out and making a play off that. So that's something to, think about maybe. Your E is a very unique ability. So after a brief cast, it will make you invisible. The enemy will see the shroud very similar to this. They'll see you moving around. But any ally champions that aren't casting or auto-attacking, they will also be stealth. And they won't be able to see the positioning of your ally in this circle. They could stand here, they can move around it, and the enemy will only see the center of your orb. If they move out, they turn into a ghoul, but they won't be able to see what champion they are unless they do an ability or auto-attack. So they'll be like out, and they look like some sort of spectral ghoul, but the enemy won't be able to identify who went in and who left. Also, while under this effect, you and your allies that are inside the circle will get movement speed. So that can be really good in getting out of fights or initiating fights, as you could imagine, maybe with 2 or 3 allied champions in the circle and you making a play, them not knowing who or what's in the circle, and then you can make a play off that. Just bear in mind, turrets will see stealth, and you also will be spotted by control wards. So those are some things to take into consideration there. Now finally, your last ability, sorry, I'm making through this as quick as possible, is a global ult. So after a short delay, it gives you vision, and you saw the damage there. Very similar to how the Q works. There's 2 lines. So if you'll have a look there, in the middle there's a thin line, and then they got the rest of the other section. So the middle section is damage only, and the side sections give a shield. Extremely similar to the Q, but obviously much bigger. So you can use this to make snipe plays. You can use this to shield an ally that's on the top side of the map. The only way this is blocked, there's 2 ways actually, there's 2 ways. Bromwall and Yasuo Windwall will block this. Just so that you know. And while we're mentioning about Yasuo, all of your other damaging abilities, your auto attacks, well, sorry, your auto attack and your Q will go through Windwall, not your W. So you can harass through a wind wall in a team fight. So that's another good bonus of Senna as well. Her attacks go through wind wall. So you can use this. This is a nice tool with your presence of mind. So this is a nice way how you can get presence of mind stacks by saving a teammate on the other side of the map, and then you get the extra mana through. And an extra assist gold as well. If it's 1v1 up top side and you help get a kill up there, you'll get 150 gold. So it's a pretty nice tool, no matter where you're on the map. And it can help if, say, you're against a tank support and they like roaming a lot. This gives you a way to help a little bit on those other lanes. What's the other one that blocks it besides Yasuo again? Bromwall. Bromwall blocks projectiles as well. Now we've gone through the abilities. I hope I've done my best to explain that. So the core fundamentals of Senna is 20 stacks. 20 stacks. That's all you're going to be thinking about. That very first 20 stacks, and then thinking about the next 20, and then the next 20. It's okay to overextend slightly in lane as long as it's not by a CC effect, a crowd control effect. Because you can trade in for an auto attack. And then if you take a bit of damage back, you'll Q, you'll heal yourself up a little bit, you'll grab that soul and you run away. That's what you'll be doing the entire time, running away. If you land a long range W and it's not a good placement, you can use any minion. I missed it there, but there we go, got it. You can use any minion or champion or turret to hit them through. So there could be a situation where... How can we explain this one? Enemy dummy. Pretend this is an enemy turret, because you can shoot through enemy turrets. So you can hit them through, see if they're really low, and you can pick them off that way. That works too. And as someone else mentioned, yes, wards as well. So one trick shot that you'll have to get used to, especially on your spectral sickle. You wouldn't really always want to do a control ward for it as well. Can that one go away? Oh no, what have I started? Alright, there we go. Is ward queues. So, boom, like that as well. So thank you for mentioning that. Yes, ward queues can be pretty important in the lane, especially in very awkward team fights where you just need the extension. Because the Q range does get further and further. But sometimes you can't like click in the range because you can see on the circle, it's about half the range of the Q. So there's all that range there that you're missing out on without having a target to actually Q on. So the Q damage extends beyond the target distance? Yes. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to queue over to here unless I was standing where I am right now without the a minion or anything else, a ward, a champion to actually queue on to. So those are the main fundamentals and like slightly advanced tips that you'll need to learn when playing Senna. Everything here is crucial into understanding how she works, especially how her Q works. It's all about gathering souls, and landing your Qs. So don't be afraid to overextend a tiny bit. As always, no matter what support you're playing, understand the cooldown on the enemy champions. So say if you're playing against a Blitzcrank and Blitzcrank misses his hook, you have a 15-second window to be really aggressive, try and land as many auto attacks and abilities as possible to not only do damage harassment but to gather souls. So that's the kind of thing you're looking at when playing Senna, or generally any support. That is your main window of opportunity to get things going. Do factor in your mana a little bit, especially if you don't have Presence of Mind stacks. Like sometimes the best case scenario, if you're running Presence of Mind, there's a level 1 invade and you get an assist, because that assist will equal 100 extra base mana, which will help a lot in the lane. Now, in terms of like specific matchups, I personally pick Senna into, as I mentioned earlier with the Executioners, into Enchanters. So that goes with Yumi's extremely meta right now, Soraka, Nami, anything that heals on the bot side. Executioners is super cheap to buy, but it's enough of an annoyance for your AD carry to purchase to take them away from their core build, but it's in Senna's core build anyway, just that you'll be picking up it slightly earlier. But the mitigation of that 40% on the healing is huge, especially when a team fight comes out, and that will affect things like summon a heal as well. But remember, you don't need to pick up the Executioners if there is no healing on the enemy bot lane, but it is a huge buff. Senna is particularly weak to hard engage, so the Blitzcrank example there, if he does miss his hook, then that's when you need to use that opportunity to unload as much as you can. Against a lot of the hard engages, they do struggle level 1, so you really need to try and harass as much as you can around that level 1 while respecting a level 2. Whoever gets level 2 first in the lane will usually get caught out. What AD carries are good with Senna? So, Senna is usually played with lots of weird different things because, as we mentioned earlier, she doesn't want souls, and sometimes running 2 AD carries, essentially she's an AD carry, support AD carry. The bot lane can be sometimes tricky. The ideal situation is that she's actually playing with a tank or an AP carry, like a Syndra or a Heimerdinger on the bot side. But someone who can be a little bit more passive in the earlier lanes of phase, because you're not looking for a kill in those early stages. So playing with a burst AD carry like Lucian, who really wants to get a kill early, or a Draven, isn't necessarily a good idea, because you're ramping up. The whole idea of Senna is that you're ramping up. So playing with like an Ezreal is, generally that kind of champion is ideal. You don't necessarily want to play also on the same end of that. You don't want to be playing with a ramping up AD carry, because then neither of you will be able to do too much in the laning phase. Like if you're playing with the Vayne or a Kog'Maw, those champions really need an Ardent Senza. Senna could in theory go down that option, but are highly advised against it. So she works well with champions that can hold their own a little bit, have a later in the lane spike with like a Tyr or a Sheen. So my main one I'm thinking of right now is an Ezreal in terms of AD carry. You could do like Xayah, that would be okay as well. Jhin, essentially a pretty good pick as well, because you have some CC overlaps. So if you have another AD carry that can also apply CC in the lane, like the Xayah Roots or the Jhin W, those are really nice things that can work well together, and and be nice. How would she work with Tristana? It would be tricky. I think you could probably get a level 2 engage off. If they're level 1 and you're level 2, you could maybe make a player there, because you would have your W ready to follow up a Tristana jump. But overall in the laning phase, it would be tricky to do. You want to get them, you want to whistle them down. You don't want to go in for 100% versus 100% health fight, because you will lose a lot of those ones. Now, is there any other questions that wish to be asked? I think I have covered as much as I possibly can. If there's any questions in the YouTube comments, then please let me know. I'll do my best to answer them. Skills, what skills to max first? Okay, right, let's talk about that. Did forget to go over that. So Q is your thing that you'll be maxing first all the time. Always your Q, it's your main ability. It will also proc Glacial Augment, as we mentioned earlier, so it'll slow the enemy down. And you'll be able to move into closer to them because of the approach velocity, if needed to chase. Yes. Okay, thank you, Eric. And your W will be second, increases the route duration every time you put a point in, so catching out the enemy longer is pretty important. And then finally your E. You will obviously take your ultimate when they're ready, like level 6, 11 and 16. What I should add, yes, is that your ultimate will only do damage to champions. It doesn't hit minions or dragon or baron or herald, only champions. And the shields will only affect your allied champions as well. One thing I should probably add as well is that your shield gets stronger as well depending on how many souls you have. So yeah, apart from that then, that's a skill order covered. I think that is everything. I hope you enjoyed this guide. I plan on doing some more for the other champions. If you like this, let me know. If you don't, then I'll have a look at other things. I thought this might be a good way to do it because I'm not a very good editor. And I know it's a little bit rough around the edges, but hopefully the information that I've given out to you guys is something that you can use in Soda Q. And, you know, if you're completely new to League, then hopefully it's something. One advanced tip that I probably haven't mentioned as well, I know we're probably going backwards and forwards a little bit here, is the auto attack reset. That is a big one, and I didn't mention it. So when you're attacking an enemy, these are your normal auto attacks. But your auto attack, your Q is an auto attack reset, so you can do also Q also. And that's what you'll be using against control wards and picking up souls from enemy players. So you always want to do auto Q auto, auto Q auto, auto Q auto. That is your main reset. Or if you were just doing a hit and run for a soul, you could do Q auto and then run away. You don't have to stay in for that third auto at the end if you don't want to, but the main one is the Q and then auto. That is the main way you'll get souls. Could you please weigh in if you should be taking Athenes on Senna or not? Yeah, there is another enchanter type of build on Senna I do not recommend people taking, but that's not going to stop people from doing it, obviously. People are willing to try whatever they like. But there is a Athenes and Holy Grail build that some people have recommended, but I am very adamant that you should be going a DPS Senna build, otherwise you're not really doing that much, honestly. But that's my own personal opinion. I think there'll be a lot of potential wasted if you do go down that route, especially with how good the passive can be on Senna. But yeah, what about the red lethality item? Basically, you need a utility item on Senna. So you need the Edge of Night, or you need the Yumu's Ghostblade. Going into Duskar will give you a tiny bit more lethality, but honestly, overall, it's too greedy. I think it's too greedy. She's squishy enough as it is without, and she does enough damage as it is in fights without that item. I think the utility is very needed when getting into mid-game into those team fights to either help with positioning or block a devastating crowd control effect. Okay guys, hope you enjoyed that. I think we've run over about 35 minutes now on this. You've managed to stay through the entire thing. Congratulations, well done. I'll send you an award through the interwebs. And look out for another one like this if it is perceived to be good enough for you guys. If not, as I said, I'll have to rework things and tweak things maybe around. But let me know as well what champion you'd like me to do next. I'll probably do this maybe once every week. And there is a new series as well that I'm doing as well, which you'll see onto YouTube soon, which is Fill and Flex, where I play on one of my accounts that's currently in Diamond 2 on EUS, but we sign up as Phil in FlexQ, and we've had a lot of fun doing that, and I hope you guys enjoy that series when that comes out as well. So take care guys, stay safe, and see you for another guide coming very soon, hopefully.